Hey everybody, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed, to the television edition. I'm Matt Connarton, and of course...
I'm Jenn Coffey.
And we have joining us today, our guest is Periklis Karoutas. And yes, I did practice that before we went on the air.
You did a great job, Matt.
Thank you.
Great
Very
job.
good.
First try. That's excellent.
It's a beautiful name.
Well, thank you.
Your family,
Thank
you mentioned to me your family has traditional names
Yes,
to honor your heritage.
yes, it's Greek tradition that the firstborn son is named after his grandfather. So my grandfather's name was Periklis Karoutas, his grandfather's name, and so on and so on. And I like to often say it goes way back to about 2000 BC when, Perikles built the Parthenon and all that. But I'm not quite sure that the lineage goes quite that far. But I still like to tell the story.
Hey, you don't know.
You don't know. You don't know.
Well, I mean, it must go back that far because it had to start somewhere.
No, it did. I'm not sure it's our bloodline, so to speak.
Right.
But certainly it's been in the family for a very long time.
Now, I've had the honor of knowing you for a number of years, and I've gotten to work with you on a lot of different things.
A lot of campaigns, yeah.
The reason I wanted to bring you on today is I am so proud, and for our listeners and those that are watching us, you were just awarded as one of the 40 under 40 by the union leader. And I believe, is it Citizens Bank that's involved in that?
It's Citizens Bank,
Yep.
Union Leader, and BIA, the Business and Industry Association.
So out of 1.2 million people in the state of New Hampshire, you were highlighted as an up-and-coming person in the state who's under the age of 40 and is already making a difference in the state of New Hampshire. And that's something that I'm so proud to see you win that award. It's so well deserved. I've seen you work from the federal level and on, but the most important thing that I wanted to talk about is your passion, what you do that garnered you winning this award.
Well, first let me say thank you for having me on today. Looking forward to it. We've already had a lot of fun before the cameras even turned on.
Yes,
did.
yes.
So I'm
We
really
did.
looking
You
forward
guys
to
don't
it.
get to see that part. Sorry.
And I also want to say that it was an incredible honor to be chosen as one of the 40 under 40 in the 2015 class by the union leader and their partners, and share company with folks like yourself, Representative, who's a past recipient, Senator Kelly Ayotte, and several other people in our state.
Congressman Ginter, I believe, was awarded that.
Frank Ginter has, I think it was in 2002, but he might have been part of the inaugural class. But it's great company to be with, and
It is an honor. I agree.
And more so last week when we had the reception, to share the stage and the highlight with 39 other people and listen to their story and what they've been doing to make a difference in New Hampshire was a very overwhelming experience to see some of the things that people are doing, and just the diversity of professionalism and talent in the state really is amazing. It's inspiring.
It really is. I know that when I was the class of 2011, and the stories that people come up with, the people that are out there that are saving animals or saving lives, or coming up with new and innovative ways to make things easier for people in our state is amazing. And I felt humbled, and I also kind of had this feeling like, I don't know, I think these guys did a whole lot more than me, and I don't know if I should be here.
I had the same feeling. I'm listening to some of these people and the level of volunteerism with some of these nonprofits and the lives that they're touching every single day, and I'm like, they made a mistake. I don't know why I'm here.
No, I disagree.
There's got to be somebody else that could have, filled my little slot here that's making a bigger impact certainly than I am. But to be chosen, I was very honored. I am honored to be part of it. And again, it just says something about the type of people that live in this state and their commitment to community, to their friends and neighbors.
And to get this award, other people have to nominate you. It's not something you can, like, oh, I want to try and win this.
It doesn't work that way.
Other people have to be willing to want to write into the union leader or submit your name and give a reason why they want you. And I believe they get hundreds.
Oh, it was, I don't know the exact number. I was told that this was the most nominations they've ever received.
Wow.
Which was great to hear. But yeah, it's not like one of those online poll daddy things where you can just click on your name 100 times and hope you win. They do get solicitations from people that nominate you,
And they vet and they look it all out, and so you won that award for a really good reason. You earned it.
How far back does it go, by the way? How many years have they been doing this, do you know?
I believe 2001 or 2002.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So it's relatively new, but it's certainly been somewhat established over the last decade or so as a place to recognize people that have been doing some great things in our state.
Yeah. I'm really curious about, so you used to work for Benny Media, correct?
I did. I worked, to go right before my Benny Media time, I worked for Bill Binney on his campaign for U.S. Senate.
Okay.
So I was the deputy campaign manager. Unfortunately, he didn't make it across the finish line. And then I continued working with Mr. Binney on with his company, Carlisle Capital. And
So he didn't hold it against you that he lost.
No, apparently didn't. Bill's a great guy. We got along swimmingly. And I learned a lot from working with him and his company. And when he bought the old WNDS, turned it to WBIN and Benny Media with the radio stations. I was working there. I was the political director. We did some presidential debates. We did some live in-studio debates with some members of Congress in the gubernatorial races. It was an excellent experience.
Yeah.
Those guys are doing a wonderful job over there. My understanding is their ratings have been going up. They launched a new newscast. They've got some great people there like Kevin Landrigan and others.
The website looks great.
It does look great. I look at it every day. I follow them on Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff.
I have the app.
They're doing a great job.
I like the alerts I get on the app.
Do you?
Yeah.
I've got so many apps on my phone. Let me tell you, I got 6 pages of apps on my phone that I lose track of what I have. I was at the State House actually earlier this week, and someone talked about some really great scanner app that you could use to scan things, and you got to check it out. You got to check it out. I go to search it, and I find out that I already had it. Never used it.
Right.
So I got to do a technology purge at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, every once in a while you gotta go through it and clear off the stuff that, for whatever reason, the phones come with football things on them, and I can't get rid of them.
Yeah,
And I don't know
they make
why.
it hard to remove apps, So now what year was that, the campaign? Because I didn't actually realize until recently that he had run.
Sure, that was 2010.
Okay.
2010, he was in a primary with now Senator Kelly Ayotte,
Okay.
Ovid LaMontagne, Jim Bender, and a few others. And it was a passionate primary.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. And like I said, we
It was a lot of fun.
unfortunately didn't make it across the finish line.
Yeah, I would have rather sent a businessman up there, but
Is that the only time he's run? That one time?
That was his first time.
Okay.
First time candidate.
Okay. Yeah. Now, what was your experience on campaigns prior to that? Had you run campaigns or?
I've been a part of a ton of campaigns.
Yeah.
I've been working with now Senate Majority Leader Jeb Bradley when he was in Congress.
Yeah.
I managed some of his campaigns and was
Wow.
part of his federal staff. Jenn and I worked very closely with Governor Huckabee when he ran for president. So I was part of his staff and part of his leadership staff here in New Hampshire.
even though I was a Ron Paul supporter.
It's okay.
But I believe in giving everybody an open ear.
Well, and that's part of the New Hampshire primary, right? It's
Yeah.
part of what makes us special. I can't tell you how many times I'd bring, Governor Huckabee into a room. People come up and say, "Well, I'm supporting Mitt Romney, but I want to hear what you have to say."
Sure, yeah.
And 3-4 months later, you'd see the same person, and the governor would be like, "Well, what's going on here?" And I'm like, "This is part of how it works." And people would say, "I used to support Mitt Romney, but now I'm leaning towards you." And there's a lot of that shifting that happens over time because you really need to earn people's vote in the state, as we all know. You have to come do the retail politics. You have to face people. You have to do these town hall meetings and answer questions.
Yes.
This is not a state where you can just roll in with a big fat media buy and give a speech to 1,000 people and then leave.
And
You
we've
need
had
a-
them do that.
And it hasn't worked out well for them.
And
has
no,
it?
it has not. I don't think that anybody who's refused to do Q&As has actually won anything recently, at
No,
least
they have
anything
not.
I can think of anyway.
Do you feel like it's a little bit of a sidebar, but Tony
Sure.
Chanella was on recently, and he was saying that he feels like it's starting late this cycle, like they're being a little slow to get to New Hampshire and do that. It's a little late in the season this time around.
It's hard. It depends when you define start. I mean, certainly Rand Paul has been in this state for years.
Yeah, that's true.
Ted Cruz visited the state a long time ago. Now, Jeb Bush hasn't been here for quite a long time.
Yeah.
But we all know who he is from his family.
Yeah,
so there's more and more visits earlier and earlier on under the guise of helping some of the county
fundraising.
There was a number of them that were in before our last general election.
Sure, yeah.
And they were touting for different candidates that were running for House or Senate or
even
federal.
Fundraising for House Republicans and Senate Republicans. Bobby Jindal, I believe, came and did a lot of fundraisers for some of the state senators and state reps in the state. So maybe this more formal process is starting a little bit later.
Yeah.
But the dipping your toe in the water has been starting way earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Way earlier.
Yeah.
I can remember last year going to events, and they were bringing candidates around, prospective candidates around. And last year I went to an event that Chairman Horn had invited me to with Rand Paul and Previs.
Yes, yes.
And there was a number of people there, and it was like facing a firing squad for Rand Paul, to be honest, because this is New Hampshire. You sit down at a table with people, and they're going to start firing questions at you, and they want to hear real answers. They don't want to hear a circle around. And if you circle around, they'll go back to you and go, yeah, that was nice, but you really didn't answer my question. Can you tell me? And you see that here in New Hampshire, I think, more than you do in other states, just because we're the first in the nation and we get better access.
We get better access, and we're used to it. We're pros at it. We've been doing it a long time.
It is our sport.
It is our sport. And here's the thing that I hear from these candidates all the time. So they sit down or stand up at a town hall, as it were. They answer all these questions. They get the tough one-on-ones at the kitchen table, and then they turn around and say, well, can I count on your support? I answered your questions. We seem to be on the same page. And they go, well, I'm not sure. I've only met you once or twice.
Right.
I haven't met the other 10 candidates, so I'm not sure yet. And it drives them up the wall because they're not used to it in their home states where things are a little bit different. So it's a really humbling thing to get these governors, senators, these powerful people to come to our state. They meet with our people, our citizens, our neighbors, and they're forced to really get down to it on the policy level and one-on-one and learn about how things work here and how to connect with people, maybe in a way that they haven't been doing in a long time in previous elections.
We went to see Donald Trump when he was in the state last week, and we got to record it for a special edition for the radio version of this show, and offered our analysis and whatnot. But he actually said, make your questions as vicious as you want. He actually, which fits his persona. I don't know if anyone else would say that necessarily, but he was like, make your questions as vicious as they want. I don't care. When he did the Q&A.
I got a chance to meet Donald Trump when he came here a few years ago, and I thought he was certainly a very entertaining speaker and very engaging. People really loved talking to him, and he was happy to stay and take pictures and shake hands. And he certainly isn't afraid to speak his mind.
Right.
A lot of people do appreciate that.
A lot of people appreciate that. Yeah. A lot of people appreciate that. I think that people appreciate the fact that he builds things. And we need more jobs, and they kind of look that way. But I don't want to digress off topic. I really want to focus on you and your passions. And what are the things that you've been passionate about, that you've been working on over the years, that garnered the notice that won you the award?
Well, we're kind of talking about it a little bit in a little digression with politics. I do believe in public service. I do believe that everyone should be aware of who their elected officials are and what some of the issues are. Now, no one expects every single person who's got, their full-time job, they've got, husbands and wives and children and other things they need to, worry about, to understand all 1,000 bills that are happening in the New Hampshire legislature every year, or God knows, nobody really understands what's happening in Congress half the time.
Right.
I don't know that Congress knows what's happening in Congress half the time.
Unbelievable.
Well, honestly, I mean, when you look at it, it must be frustrating to you, because I know that one of your strong suits is advocacy. And I know that's one of your passions, and we can get into what you like, what your passions are for advocacy. But there are bills that have been up in Congress for 10 years and never seen a vote.
That is very true. But I think every year that we see more people engaged in the process and voting is good. Every time I work on a project, whether it's a political campaign, legislative initiative, or a community or nonprofit project, anytime I see legislators getting more involved in something they weren't before. Anytime I see people coming to meetings and I hear things like, I've never been to one of these,
right,
or I've never met so-and-so,
yeah,
I think is excellent.
It's encouraging.
It is very encouraging.
I've always said the greatest threat to our liberty is apathy.
Right.
People just kind of sitting it out.
So this morning, I do have to say, March 25th is Greek Independence Day. I should have said this right in the beginning. So happy Greek Independence Day to
definitely.
all your listeners and viewers today that are of Greek heritage. And in Dover, New Hampshire, we have a Greek flag raising ceremony every year. Dover's my hometown, and a lot of members of the Greek community from our church, they go, and the city of Dover allows us to raise the flag and leave it up for a week. Which, what other place in this world can people celebrate a little part of their heritage on municipal or state property?
Right.
I mean, it certainly isn't happening in most of Europe and
Sure.
other parts of the world. So I think that's an incredible celebration of our democracy. But we're there, and the mayor came. Our state senator showed up. Last year, Governor Hassan made an impromptu appearance, which was excellent. And a lot of the people were there were like, "Who's that guy?" And I'm like, "Well, that's he's your state senator. Would you like to meet him?"
Right.
And they're like, "Well, what would I say?" I'm like, "Tell him where you live, what you do, ask him questions.
Yeah.
Believe me, he's a politician. He'll listen and he'll talk."
Right.
So I did that. I introduced him around to a few other people, and I'm having coffee with a few others. We went to breakfast after to continue the celebration of Greek Independence Day. And one of my uncle actually goes, "I like that guy. What was his name?" I told him his name. And I'm like, "What did you like about him?" He goes, "He listened to me." I'm like, "Well, of course he did. Have you ever, went out to talk to your elected official before?" And he's like, "No, they don't need me. They don't need my vote.
What
I'm out of the
senator
process."
was it?
Senator David Waters,
Okay.
out of Dover, who actually
Excellent.
was one of my professors at UNH.
Oh,
One of
wow.
my English professors. Very small world.
Yeah.
But he did a great job being very responsive to the people there. He answered questions. But when I can look and hear people say, I enjoyed talking to him, not so much because they enjoyed meeting a new friend, but the fact that they felt like they could touch an element of their government, I think is a positive step.
But then what do you say, let me play devil's advocate a little bit.
Sure.
What do you say to the cynic who looks at that and says, well, of course David Waters listened to these people. He needs their votes. It's ultimately that's part of the sales job. That's why they call it retail politics.
Well, if he needs their vote, he's got to be responsive. And at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want a government that's responsive to us, to our opinions, to our needs and desires.
Yeah.
Representatives, and better than any of us here, what it's like to serve constituents and what it's like to have them express themselves. And most of the time they're polite and sometimes they're not, but it's an important part of the process.
Yeah.
So maybe he is selfishly, saying nice things because he wants to get elected, but as long as he's doing the right things and people are supporting him because of it, then that's the way it works.
Yeah.
If he's there and he's answering questions and he's there for the celebratory purposes of celebrating the Greek heritage and doing the right things, that's great. That's what you want to see.
Exactly.
You don't want to see them showing up and grandstanding and starting to hand out literature when you're trying to celebrate your event.
Right. No, he was happy to be there and talk
That's
to people.
great.
And if I didn't introduce him to some of the other folks, they would have been like, "Who's that guy? He doesn't look Greek."
Right.
But it's great that people can get so close to their government here in New Hampshire. It doesn't happen in other places.
Yeah.
Like I said before, I worked with Governor Huckabee in his last presidential campaign, and one of the stories that he told, probably all through Iowa and South Carolina, but certainly all throughout New Hampshire, was that when he was a child, his father said, "Son, we're going to go to downtown because the governor is coming to, Hope, Arkansas." Yes, he's from Hope, same as former President Clinton.
Yes.
And his father said to him, "You can go your whole life and never meet the governor of your own state." And then certainly, 30 some odd years later, he became the governor of that state. But in New Hampshire, that mindset doesn't exist.
Right.
Of course, you're probably going to meet a governor. You're probably going to meet all of them, and a few presidents, and members of Congress, and all of that.
Right.
And I think when they come here too, they're not some of them aren't ready for the fact that New Hampshire citizens are going to look at them just like their next door neighbor. They're not a superstar. They're not a rock star. Maybe some people have that star in the eye type thing, but the majority of New Hampshire citizens, New Hampshire citizens are more interested in what they've got to say and answering their questions.
I remember I was at a Stratford County meeting maybe 10 years ago, and they were talking about the process. And there was a gentleman there, his name escapes me, and he says, there's the whole expression of, I'm not sure if I'm going to support him, I've only met him 2 or 3 times. This person says, it's not enough for me to meet him, I really need to get to know him. He's got to come and help me rake my leaves. He's really got to walk a mile in my shoes and understand what I'm going through.
Right.
And no one else expects that.
Right.
It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, but you got to be careful about that. I know the representative from my old hometown of Andover really freaked out my son and a few other people because he went to the town dump when he was running, and he wasn't just sign waving, he was like going to their cars and like taking their trash out and dumping it for them.
Yeah, that's a little too much.
My son thought it was wicked creepy. He's
that's
like,
a little weird.
Why are you in my car?
Keep it to a handshake.
Right.
Yeah,
he was a handshake.
He was a little creepy. And then what was really funny was after he got elected, there was a few people going, well, where is he? He's not taking the trash out of my car anymore.
Well, in my community, it's pay to throw, right? We have you have to buy a garbage bag. Yep. So if he wants to drive by my neighborhood and pick it up and spare me the bag, he's more than welcome to do that.
Sure. I would vote for someone who delivered a pizza. That would get my vote.
The pizza delivery would get your vote?
Yes.
You're that easy?
Yep. That would impress me.
What about pizza parties? Because they're notorious. When they have the phone banks, they'll feed you pizza.
Right.
So if you're willing to put in some hours, I know plenty of people that'll happily feed you pizza.
Yeah, but then you got to earn it. Yeah. I just want people to give me pizza.
Knock, knock, who's there? It's pizza.
Yes.
So how much time? So they show up with a large pizza.
Yeah.
How much time are you going to give them for them to give you the pitch?
Dangerous territory.
I'm curious.
PK.
This could be a new tactic. This could be a new tactic.
I would probably be willing to let them give me the pitch while I consume the pizza.
The whole pizza.
Well, I can eat a whole pizza.
Right, but so if they should come in with like a large pizza fully loaded, so they got at least 10 minutes with you?
Not fully loaded. I don't want any pineapple on it.
No
That's
pineapple.
gross.
Okay.
I love pineapple.
And no olives.
Do you really?
But
I
otherwise,
love olives
yes.
on pizza. How can you not love olives?
I like Greek olives on pizza.
I love Greek olives. I grew up going to
I'm biased.
It was a restaurant in my when I was growing up. My dad, that was his treat, is he would go there. Unfortunately, they closed. They were in Brockton, Massachusetts, but they made the best Greek salads ever. And he would get these big containers of these Greek salads with extra dressing and extra olives on the side and all the feta. And we just have a big family pig out on Greek salad. Like it was a treat.
But you're not going to get Matt's vote on a salad. He needs pizza, apparently.
He needs pizza,
right? Yeah. I mean, I'd even let them have a slice.
Well, especially if they brought it. I
mean, well, exactly.
You would allow them to have one.
One slice.
Just one, yes.
One slice.
The rest of it's for me.
All right. Well, it's good to know.
He's a pizza addict, so they're now you know how to kind of get in there.
I might put that on my next, strategy list. Potentially just random pizza deliveries and see if that earns
I think it would work.
I don't know.
So who's been to the state the most this time around? Is it Rand?
It probably has been Rand, but I haven't been keeping track. But
they seem to all be here within last week and this week.
But we don't know if Rand is even going to be able to run, which is funny because he's got that Kentucky problem with the ballot. He can't be on there twice. And
I'm getting a wicked good kick out of the whole birther thing going on about.
With Ted Cruz.
He was born in Canada.
Yeah.
But Ted Cruz is here. Yeah.
That's it. It's stupidity, but it's funny at the same time. But on a serious note, that takes away from the issues.
It does. I mean, he's got to explain it and then move on. So people understand what it is. You can't really skirt it. Be like, look, here's why.
Yeah.
And then move on. Because at the end of the day, it is all about the issues. It's all about leadership and the kind of leadership people want. But I do think it is absolutely amazing how many candidates we have on the Republican side. Now, we're certainly Republicans, and the amount of energy has been, I think, amazing. It's been great for us. There's so many candidates. John Kasich from Ohio, I think, I don't know if he's still here, or he just wrapped up a visit.
Yeah.
But a lot of...
I didn't know about him, actually.
Yeah, he's been here. He was over in Merrimack County for an event, and I think one or two others. And apparently, full crowds. A lot of people really wanted to meet him and see what he had to say. And sure, he's doing the dance like everybody else. Not sure if he's going to run. But there's a lot of people that wanted to hear from him. And, Lindsey Graham, I think, is making a second visit. He was just here like a week ago.
I didn't know that.
I just found out about him this morning. I did not know he was considering running.
Well, yeah, he made a visit last week. I didn't go to any of those visits.
Yeah.
I wanted to try to make one of them because I haven't met the man. I'd like to meet everybody. I'd like to see what they have to say.
Yes.
But I read a lot of the press coverage, and I read him on Politico, and certainly he's a national figure. And he seems to have an interesting approach, right? He seems to be a little bit more willing to say we need to cut a deal with the Democrats, or we need to have maybe some compromise. Or I think the last thing I read was, Ted Cruz talked about how we need to get rid of Obamacare completely, just every word of it. And Lindsey Graham said something back like, well, that's not going to happen. Like it isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how that'll play in a primary.
Right.
But the fact that he's coming in here, he is expressing a different opinion. It's good for the process.
We had a very real discussion with Congressman Ginter when he was on the show about ACS and about whether or not the ACA rather, and the talking about fully repealing it, how pretty much impossible that is, but that there are a lot of things that we can change, improve, get rid of the mandate, get rid of the tax penalties.
Absolutely.
One of the things that impressed me about the congressman was that, leading up to this last election, he was speaking, I thought, very maturely and intelligently about, repealing Obamacare isn't going to happen, so let's be pragmatic about it and focus on the parts that need reform and work toward that, which I've been saying for literally years now.
I think 4 years to the day.
Yeah,
Isn't today the anniversary of when it was signed?
You're right.
Law?
Yeah, it was either today or yesterday. Yeah, was it today?
We're just going to say it's today.
Okay.
And there
I think
are,
it was today.
Okay.
and there are still tons of people who don't have health care, or who I've talked to that are like crying and going, I put in everything, but it wants me to pay the same amount of money that the COBRA was, and I can't afford it.
In some states, it's gone better than others, but here I don't think it's gone very well.
Sure. Well,
Here
I
it's
don't know
been
how
horrific.
it's gone here. I know that some of the early problems in other states like Oregon, I think, was like the worst, right? Where there was privacy issues. That you go through the whole thing at the website, and right at the very end, it just brings you right to the beginning again, and it just seems like it was like this never-ending loop where you could never actually get finally, entered into the program.
Right.
But certainly, every large program is going to have major flaws.
Sure. Absolutely.
The real question is, how do we fix them? And
Right.
what our
Especially
elected-
when it's 2,000 pages long and nobody read it before they voted on it.
or since, probably. I don't think anyone's ever
There are
read from
some.
point A to point B on
You know what's
Right.
really interesting is I went on YouTube and did a search and came up with some videos where of people who've literally pulled out the pages and here's a page that says when you reach this age, your health care has to be signed off by X government official as acceptable or not acceptable or what have you, which I personally found very offensive and frightening because I don't want to see medicine doled out based on age. But it's interesting, some of those videos, the things that are in there that you don't even know are really scary.
What's scary is how the process came about. We could all agree that we're in need of some healthcare reform.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Sure, there's affordability issues. There's all sorts of issues.
Yeah.
Then let's have a real, honest conversation. Let's have leaders, our elected leaders, lead, and let's have a consensus. Let's have it go through the real process and get elected on, and have transparency. And there wasn't a lot of that.
There wasn't any of that as far as
I'm
I'm
being
concerned.
polite.
Sure.
I'm being polite.
You're being polite,
I
yes.
feel like, though, I've always been frustrated with, particularly with in the last few years, or leading up to the passing of the ACA with both parties, because I was frustrated, and I'm an independent, by the way. I'm not a member of either party, but so I just kind of.
He's just
I
saying,
used to be a Democrat.
You're
but
just saying that because you want more pizza.
I do want
That's
more
why
pizza.
you're saying you
yes,
just want more
I
people
want
to come
more pizza
in,
people.
Both sides of the aisle. I
which
get
would
it.
be great. I mean, it's pretty smart. You got to admit, but
If we start getting pizza,
but no olives. But the thing is, I was frustrated with the Democrats who don't understand that. You don't make something better by adding more bureaucracy to it and making it more complicated. That doesn't make it better. That makes it worse. But I've also always been frustrated with Republicans because I feel like nationally there tends to be, they've always kind of wanted to, at least this is my perception, ignore the need for healthcare reform, except when they have something to push back against. And again, I'm not talking about here. I'm talking about nationally.
Right.
When,
I respectfully disagree with that,
but
because it was Republicans that pushed and got women the right to go see their GYN and not have it declared a specialist.
But I'm speaking in I'm speaking in the macro, broadly, in terms of massive healthcare reform. When Hillary tried to do it during the Clinton administration and had to give up, there was a lot of talk among Republicans. Well, what about us? We have ideas too. Why, what are you doing? Let's work together on this. But as soon as she gave up, then they were silent. And I feel like there was a lot of that this time around. All these years go by, we don't hear much out of Republicans nationally on this, but then Obama comes along and he's pushing the ACA, and all of a sudden they're like, well, what about our ideas? But unless there's something to push back against, I feel like they generally don't want to talk about it.
I disagree. I think that the Republicans are very open to talk about the ACS and things that they'd like to see changed.
Well, yes, but I'm talking about
like
leading
you said,
up to
there's
it.
Some out there that
when there's nothing to push back
wholeheartedly
against.
repeal, but then there are others that see some validity. I mean, realistically, I don't think a Democrat or a Republican would be against the fact that if your kid's born with a heart defect for the rest of its life, it can never have health insurance.
Yeah, everyone agrees on the pre-existing
condition. It has a pre-existing condition.
Sure.
Yeah.
Personally, I think that if my child is still my dependent and I'm paying his college tuition and I'm paying his health care, well then, I get to, count that too.
Sure.
But
it's a complicated.
It's a very
complicated
thing.
issue.
And more government gets into it, the more of a mess it makes. I mean, if you look at our emergency rooms, they're overrun. Why? Because governments put so much red tape in there and so many dangerous things that if I cross this line, I could get a lawsuit. So I better run all of this
When it comes to government, usually the more local, the better. The simpler,
I agree.
the better.
Yep.
The more transparent, always the better.
Absolutely.
And that's what we need.
Absolutely.
And the most important thing is, whatever our leaders in Washington or Concord do, is that they do it open, it's transparent, and we can see, and that we ultimately get what's right for our citizens. That's the most important thing.
Stop taxing us.
Yeah, it's certainly not taxing us. Let me tell you, it's hard. New Hampshire, we're very fortunate, very wealthy state, but taxes are very burdensome, and they're burdensome on small businesses, and property taxes are a huge burden. I know that for me, it's a bit of a sore spot because I just paid some of my tax bills, and I wish I wasn't spending all that money. But
Right.
not to get too far off topic.
But what are some of the passions that you've really put a lot of energy into to try and work towards change to help citizens in New Hampshire?
Well, it's really more with working with legislators that ultimately go and make a difference. There's nothing in me that wants to be an elected official. I'm
really? You've never considered it?
Never considered it. I have no desire whatsoever.
I don't blame you.
and there's not even an iota of me that wants to do that.
Yeah.
Zero.
Yeah.
But I do love the process. I do love and appreciate that there are people that do put their name forward and want to get elected and want to do all this work on behalf of their citizens. It's a necessity. We need this.
Right.
And I love working with them and developing these grassroots organizations and working with people that do get energized and passionate about a candidate or a cause or whatever the case may be, and help them organize and show how they can be powerful. And that's really what kind of keeps me going. That's what got me to stay in politics all these years, despite all the phone banking and all the long hours and the stress of winning and losing elections.
Sure.
It's a bit of a high when you're able to win, not just an election, but able to help mobilize people and organizations and candidates to a cause and a victory. It's a great feeling.
I can see the pride in your face. And I can understand it. It's neat when you have someone or an organization to be able to help them grow and get to watch that happen is amazing. What are some of the nonprofits in New Hampshire are there any that you'd like to highlight that you've worked with?
I don't want to,
or was it
I don't want to
bad business to talk about any specifics?
I don't want to talk about any specifics on specific clients and things like that. I don't think that's
general topics
appropriate
that interest you. Healthcare, child education. What gets your attention?
my wife works with a lot of nonprofits, and she's on the board, and a lot of it is geared towards the legal community and access to the legal community, to legal services, as well as relating to child care, early development, things like that. And I've really enjoyed, working in ways that I can to help her organization and some of the organizations that she's a part of.
That's great. That's awesome.
I'm curious too with the campaigning
Sure.
and the grassroots work and everything. What are some of the challenges in that area that you think? Because I've heard, particularly this last time around, with the midterms, a lot of sort of criticism, both from within and outside of the Republican Party, that the Democrats were more organized, that they seem to use social media so much better. What's your take on that as someone who's on the ground?
The biggest problem is always getting people's attention span. It's a commodity, right?
Oh yeah.
As you notice, you get bombarded with radio ads and print ads and all these kinds of advertisements. And yes, we're talking about social media, so you can't even check your Facebook or a score on an app without getting some sort of vote for me kind of thing out there.
Yeah.
So passion and attention span, at the end of the day, those are the things that you need to tap into. I don't think it's fair to say that the Democrats are so well organized or so much more organized than any other party, because you're tapping into so many things like passion and who's more organized and what people are looking for. Certainly, the Democrats
I would agree with you.
Have been perceived as being more organized and more tech savvy, and certainly the president's campaign or campaigns really integrated new media in a way that really weren't done before.
Right.
So
we heard a lot of that in
to acknowledge
2012 with the presidential campaign. We heard a lot of that. Is part of that, though, too, that maybe, is it possible that it's easier for Democrats in some ways to be organized or more focused in terms of messaging, because we don't see the same fissures on the left that you do on the right? In the Republican Party, you've got these different factions that are kind of fighting for,
You call them factions. I wouldn't call them factions. You get a lot of people. You got a big tent, so there's a lot of different type of people with different opinions and beliefs.
Because you always hear about how the Democrats kind of march in lockstep and they just kind of fall in line, whereas you don't see that on the right. So I just wonder if it's easier to focus that message. I mean, I think the discussions and whatnot, the debate that goes on the right is probably very healthy. I think I think it's a good thing, but I think in some situations there's a price for that too.
Sure. Well, remember, you're talking about the Democrats marching in lockstep. Certainly, Hillary Clinton is perceived as the front runner.
Yeah.
And she hasn't really taken too many steps forward. Certainly not like some of the Republicans making visits and all that.
Yeah.
But there is a growing movement to recruit Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So they've got their own fissures in the party. They've got their own.
It may come to the surface soon.
It will.
Yeah.
It will.
Which would be fascinating to see play out.
Martin O'Malley from, I believe it's Rhode Island or Connecticut. I can't remember. Former Democratic governor. He's been in the state repeatedly. I'm not sure how it's playing. I don't go to too many Democratic events.
And there's Bernie Sanders right next door.
And there's Bernie Sanders, who's always entertaining.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Always very
He's an interesting guy.
He's an interesting guy.
And we do specials all the time, and we always tell any of them we'd be more than happy to run a special for them. Democrats just don't seem to take us up on it that much.
Well, you got to keep trying.
Yeah,
keep trying.
It's there if they want it. It's there if they want it.
Yeah.
Any opportunity to talk to people, they should want to spread their message too.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
really, you get a lot of opportunities to talk to not just legislators but people, and work towards making life better in New Hampshire in various ways.
But also, I try to. But also, awareness. When I worked at Binney Media, one of the things that I used to do is I did a short segment where I talked about some things that were happening in government, either the federal government or different state governments, that I used to refer to it as below the fold. It's what no one was paying attention to, no one really cared about, but yet it was something that was happening and that people should be aware. And I used a little bit of comedy, because comedy made people remember,
absolutely,
care, think about it.
Humor always gets people's attention.
And they were also 1 minute long.
Yeah.
So 1 minute long helps.
Yeah.
And had some visuals, which made it easier. So I have been thinking about doing some writing and turning that into more of a column.
Oh.
Because I do think there's a place for people to hear about that. A lot of it's like anecdotal or humorous, but it's real. I remember it was like 2 years ago, I did a piece on the wait list at the VA, a problem that still is happening today.
Yeah.
And I remember reading then, and it was like this totally buried report that I stumbled across, and it was before all the it got real national attention, and it was talking about how the average wait time for an appointment was somewhere in the low 300s as far as days.
That's stunning.
For a veteran to get into to see a doctor.
Insane.
Yeah.
And that they're hoping to cut that in half inside of like 3 years.
What?
And I thought the numbers were just so outrageous.
Yeah.
So outrageous. And I remember juxtaposing their time frame with this Russian company that was hoping to build a space hotel. And their space hotel would be done before the VA was able to do this overhaul.
Wow.
Wow.
It's just one example of something that at the time no one was really talking about.
Yeah.
And it's an absurdity.
Yeah.
Because as much as I have a passion for government and public service, I understand that there's a lot of problems with it and bureaucracy and things don't always go the way
some
they
of them are
should.
too far removed from the reality of the world that the rest of us are living in.
Oh, especially
I mean,
with the veterans. Yeah.
Medical professionals have been screaming for years. Just give them a card that lets them go to wherever they need to. We've been saying it for years and years and years, and no one would listen to the medical staff. I mean, we're receiving. I've been in the situation where I've received a veteran who was shipped from another facility who could have treated the issue, but because he's a vet, he has to go to only what is approved by them.
Sure.
So here's an additional cost. We now have to call an ambulance and have him transported to this other hospital to fix the problem that could have been fixed at the beginning of that hospital. Meanwhile, that patient is going that many more hours without treatment. Now we're starting a second emergency room bill, and we've got an ambulance bill on top of it all.
There's no excuse.
For what?
There's no excuse for any lag whatsoever in these guys and girls getting the treatment they need and desire.
Yeah.
There's no excuse.
I think a huge part of it, too, is government needs to modernize. And that's something Newt Gingrich is one of the only candidates in the past who's run who speaks about the government's need to modernize. I remember several years ago seeing a story on television news about part of the problem with the VA is, I don't remember the name of the building. There's a building in D.C. that has the files for the VA. Do you remember this?
No, but I can envision when you say the files. What's the building do? It just holds files.
Paper files for the VA, and they had to. I think it's 2 stories, and they had to reinforce the floor or the ceiling because the second floor was starting to cave in. Because there's just stacks and stacks. Some of them are in filing cabinets. Some of them are just stacks of paper on the floor. And this is where they put the files for the VA.
Those are people's
and
records and personal.
And if you think
That's
about
awful.
it, we live in an era where we all walk around with little computers in our pockets all day, and yet our government still uses paper files for these veterans to keep
Although there
track
is something to be said for shutting this thing off.
Sure.
I was working on a report last week and I did lose it. I don't. By lose it, I mean it disappeared off my iPad. So I'm still trying to find it. So there's a benefit to paper, but there's no excuse for buildings and rooms full of paper like that, or at least not bringing the digital technology.
I mean, how far back do they go? I mean, do we have like World War I records in there?
Probably.
World War II,
Probably.
Korea.
I'd be more concerned with the brand new records that are going into some place that no one's looking at, rather than in some digital database that needs to be secured firstly, but also using that data to better treat people.
Exactly.
I mean, we know who the veterans are, right? They were just in the military.
They all walk
we know who they
around
are.
with either an active duty card or a DD-214. You got one or the other.
Yeah. We know who they are.
Yeah.
We know where they're living. We should be able to create a system so we can make sure they get the treatment they need.
Yeah.
And part of that is, like you said, utilizing technology. But the government's not necessarily a trailblazer when it comes to cutting-edge technology.
Right.
But they are and they aren't, because interestingly enough, it's on the battlefields that a lot of medical developments have come, one of them being what's called a rapid infuser, which if you have somebody that's so severely hurt that they're just exsanguinating. Their blood is just leaving them. And you have the ability to hang blood and rapidly infuse it back into them. That device and the ability to do it and do it properly and not shock the patient was developed by our government to treat troops overseas. And so there, they do great.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, when they come home, we fail miserably.
It's a horrible thing. And
it is.
It's something that needs to get resolved.
I'm glad to hear
Needs
that's one of your passions.
Well, people shouldn't be mistreated.
Right.
And I view that as being mistreated. They shouldn't have to wait. Like when I make an appointment for the doctor, I usually get in within a few days. If I had to wait 200 days, I mean that's just outrageous. And 200 days as as an improvement to the 300 plus days is outrageous.
I was upset at one of the specialists that they sent me to. I had to wait 3 months, and I thought that was upsetting.
Do you think, though, as someone who's involved in campaigning, is part of the problem that this is an issue that people kind of forget about? It seems like there's a flare-up, there's a scandal with the VA or something, and everyone's all upset. And then after a few weeks, it kind of fades, and everyone kind of forgets about it again until the next scandal.
Well, now you're talking about scandal.
Yeah.
This isn't scandal. These are, real issues that need to be resolved. And I think every candidate that I've heard has addressed, the need to take care of our veterans. I think we're very fortunate that there's great candidates out there that, care about the issue.
Yeah.
The scandals bring to light the things that we already know.
Right.
And that's really the problem.
Yeah.
And, and to be fair, you can't just pinpoint a scandal and say that the whole system's wrong.
Right.
But it's the institutional problems that need to be resolved.
Yeah.
And the people that work at the VA, they their heart and passion's in it. It's not like some of the other branches of government and agencies that are maybe phoning it in.
Right. It's just
federally
bureaucracy.
speaking, just
Well,
bureaucracy.
you're talking about medical people who are there to take care of people, and it has to be equally frustrating for them with the constraints. I wonder, are there time constraints? Are they limited for how much time they can spend in the room with the patient?
Probably. I would think so.
Yeah.
And
It's got to be. I don't know.
And how do you educate a patient if you're, okay, I got 15 minutes. I just told you you had diabetes.
Yeah.
We
Time
don't,
to go. Yeah.
Time to go. We'll give you a script.
Any questions? No? Okay, great. See you.
See you
Good
later.
luck.
I'm grateful my primary is not like that. But in the VA system, there's more of a push to it's like an assembly line almost. It's like just put them on a track and push them through and shove prescriptions at them and go, okay, that solves the problem.
I'm not a healthcare professional. I've never been in that era.
That's my passion.
That's your passion. I never served in uniform. I have a great deal of respect for everybody in both those realms, and all I know is we need to fix it.
Yeah.
That's as far as I know. I'm no expert in it, but that's certainly an issue that really I hope stays on the forefront for any candidate running for office.
Are there other issues that you're hoping are going to stay at the forefront?
Well, locally in New Hampshire, I think we need to get education to be a little bit more affordable. I'm talking about higher education. That's something that I think is really very burdensome. I went to the University of New Hampshire a long time ago, and it was expensive then. And when I see some of my younger cousins and family members looking at schools in New Mexico and Colorado and Arizona because it's a third or quarter of the cost. That's mind-boggling to me, and I think it puts us at a disadvantage. That too many people are leaving to make it more affordable. That being said, we're very fortunate also because I think the University of New Hampshire and the university system does an excellent job. I think they're great schools. I got an excellent education, and which has opened a lot of doors for me. But the affordability, I think, is really, really tough.
Yeah.
I know a lot of my son's friends. My son is 21, who wanted to go to college. They just couldn't figure out how.
Just couldn't make it work.
Yeah.
So they're working, full-time jobs and hoping that sometime. Some of them are actually trying to take like part-time courses at the local tech.
Sure.
So there are kids out there, or young adults, I should say, out there that really do want to expand themselves and better themselves. the opportunity to do so is not that easy to get.
I remember I literally took as many classes as they would let me take without having to pay more tuition. In order to graduate as early as I could.
Good for you.
Because of the cost.
Yeah.
It's a real problem.
Were you able to do that? Were you able to graduate early?
Well, instead of graduating earlier, I just did a double major, so I still pay the full boat on 4 years.
Right.
Just did a double major.
Yes, but I know some people that finished early. They did the same thing, a similar track that I was on, and they tried to finish, 3 years or 3.5. 3 years, they did a couple of summer classes, and they were able to save a lot of money. And it's really significant. I think that's very important. I think it's something that needs to get addressed in order for our economy to grow and to have that next wave of innovation that's homespun and homegrown rather than imported.
I think that will improve with the scholarship programs that we have for businesses, but if we concentrate on getting rid of some of the regulations that are affecting businesses and make it easier to do business in our state, we're going to attract more. Now, with the universities, one of the best things in the world is to have a company come in that wants to do R&D.
Absolutely.
And put that and get the university systems involved in that and the innovation that comes out of that. But those things don't happen when you put so many barriers in place that a person looks at it and goes, yeah, I'm not willing to jump through that many hoops just to do this. I'll go to Vermont, it's better. Or Maine, it's better.
Well, on the business side, we saw Rick Perry, who, regardless of what people think of him as a candidate or as a governor, right? And oops, yes, we all remember that moment. But as a business ambassador to his state, he's widely regarded as having done an excellent job. He traveled all around the country, talking to large companies and trying to encourage them to move to Texas to expand and talk about the business climate and the tax climate, and business is booming in Texas. And he did a great job with that. We need. Every state, should be doing that. They should be fighting and building competition for businesses, for innovation, for growth, for manufacturing, for technology, for everything.
Right.
That's really what we need.
Yeah.
Hopefully that means, more jobs, more money, which turns
and
into
more
more
young
taxes
folks that
and more
want to
revenue.
stay in New Hampshire and don't move out and go elsewhere because, the jobs aren't there.
Or they want to be able to afford college.
Right. Just
right.
Yeah. One way or another, we're driving them out.
Oh no.
And the
we
businesses.
do a pretty good job of keeping them in, but it is a challenge. It is a challenge, and it's something that I hope becomes a consideration for people when they're trying to create their legislative agendas.
Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head right there.
I've got no vested interest other than I'm a native-born Granite Stater, and I'd love to see. Our state, build and grow. More opportunities for folks.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sounds like you love what you're doing now, but being a political director at Binney Media, that sounds like a dream job.
That was a ton of fun.
Yeah.
I really did enjoy it. We had a chance to do a presidential debate at Dartmouth College, one of our nation's great colleges, with the Washington Post and Bloomberg, and am I missing somebody? Maybe. But Bloomberg, the Washington Post, Dartmouth College, and WBIN.
Yeah.
And it was awesome.
Yeah.
To do this live, internationally broadcast, debate and the organization, and working with some great partners, and worked with Al Hunt, who used to work for the Wall Street Journal and is now, I think, managing editor at Bloomberg News. It was a great experience, and it really was great.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful event. I was lucky enough to be there, and it really was.
Yeah, it was a great time. I really did enjoy it, but it's the difference between observing and being more active.
Okay.
I loved every moment I had at WBIN. I really learned a lot, and there were some really great people over there.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to be a little bit more active in the process rather than just observing.
Yeah.
Although I did really appreciate building events where others could see politics, like these debates and several other similar type events that we did. But like I said, I just wanted to be a little bit more involved.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, we are actually about out of time. So thank you so much.
So that was an hour,
This
huh?
has been it goes quick.
That was quick.
It does go quick.
It goes quick. But before we wrap up, I want to remind everybody, of course, that today's show will be available tonight on demand on IPMNation.com, probably by about 10 p.m. at the latest. And don't forget the radio edition of Unleashed, which you can hear on both IPM Nation and DKRN.FM every Tuesday and Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, with Jenn and I. And
thank you very much, and congratulations on such a
having me.
well-deserved
congratulations,
award.
yes.
Thank you.
And I enjoyed the chance of getting to highlight one of the 40 under 40s greatest in the state of New Hampshire for the year 2015.
Well, thank you again. Thank you very much.
And quickly, too, anything you want our viewers to know about? Do you have a blog or anything that you write, or anything that you just want people to know about?
No, I do have a website, strategicalchemyllc.com.
Okay.
So you can learn a little bit more about me there.
Oh, fantastic. strategicalchemyllc.com.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Well,
Very good.
Periklis Karoutas. Did I get it right twice in a row?
2 for 2.
2 for 2.
Battle
All right.
1,000 today, Matt.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Thank
we'll
you.
talk at you all a little bit later. Thanks, everybody.